All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. You're just in time for the latest update here and what we know right now. Should we introduce ourselves again?
Well, I know Wahiga Maura is somewhere around here.
Our director says we are too full now.
He'll come back, yes. But within this last hour, Trevor Mbija and myself, Zinzi Kibiku, will be letting you know some of the stories that we're keeping an eye on. And we already teased and told you some of that.
Brilliant. So
yes.
The World Bank projects that Kenya's economy is to grow by 5.8% this year, a downwards revision compared to 6.3% projection made in August the same year.
In its report released this morning, the bank cites a tough economic environment coupled with a weakening of the private sector due to the limited access to credit.
Now, Julius Muye is in the PS Treasury. He's currently speaking right now. Let's listen in.
And so when you see KRA knocking on your doors, it's partly because we want to make sure that we collect enough revenues to cure our fiscal deficit, because we can't continue with a rising fiscal deficit. It has to come down. So I can say a lot of things around that area, because to me it is very, very important that we get it right. We should be able to fund significantly our development. Of course, you know, the principle of finance, you look at your asset structure in terms of the length of time of the asset. You also look at the appropriate financing. And so a bit of debt is necessary so that you match the profile of your assets with the financing. And so we have to borrow wisely and make sure that we do things correctly. So as I finish, because this is very exciting and I'm not the keynote speaker, I'm just making some remarks. I want to reiterate the point that we have a mindset in the National Treasury and in the government of making sure that as we push the development of Kenya through the Big Four agenda, we work very, very closely with our partners. So collaboration is a hallmark, is a key agenda that we have adopted. And so even within the National Treasury and Planning Ministry, we have got a very close network between ourselves as a ministry, the Central Bank, and Kenya Revenue Authority, because collaboration is very important. In fact, if you look at SDG number 17, it's about partnerships, it's about collaboration, it's about working together. So we are actually walking the talk and living to the expectation of SDG 17. Number 2, so that I can finish, I want to say that we are going to leverage as much as possible on ICT. And that is why we are looking at allocating sufficient resources to the ICT sector, including the development of the Konza Technopolis, so that we can have a center that is leading in a technology. Finally, may I express my gratitude on behalf of our ministry to the World Bank Group, both IDA, IBRD, IFC, MIGA, in their support to us as a country, as a government, and also the sister institution IMF will continue to work together. With those remarks, I want to say thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from my colleague and other deliberations. Thank you.
Oops. Thank you very much, Dr. Muya. That was great. A couple of pointers there. Do you think that by improving SME access to credit, we can help trickle down the effect of economic growth to the mashinani? Yes or no? P.S. Muya says yes. Okay, I see a sea of yeses and maybe 4 no's. Like you, I'm a lady and I don't tell, so no. But thank you very, very much.
Well, that is the launch of the economy report by the World Bank, which projects the growth to be about 5.8%. It's a review from the 6.3% that was believed to be the case in the same year. It means the dynamics have changed. This is a conversation we were having earlier on. Just before we got out of that conversation, there was a question as to whether advancing credit to SMEs will spur growth even in the grassroots level. And then this is also the conversation we had earlier on with Waiga Mwaura and our panelists earlier on, speaking about the economy vis-a-vis the money that's there, the growth that is there, the debt. There's a lot that they spoke about. Listening.
The Jubilee government came in, we have an ambitious budget to deliver in terms of spending. And one of the main things they look at is using borrowing and financing that budget. So you find that they may not get the external loans they will want. They will go to the local market and borrow heavily. So when you borrow heavily as a government in the local market, you crowd out private sector. And we're in that position before the interest rate cap. Government had borrowed heavily within the local market, and the interest rate cap was just a nail in the coffin in terms of the private sector credit growth. So we are having a government that is participating too much, and you look at the numbers, they tell you that Kenya is growing at 5.6%, you're going to 6.1%. Most of that is because of government participation. And you ask anyone within the economy, they'll tell you they don't feel those numbers. Because on macroeconomic calculations, so long as there's an activity, government is doing construction, is doing roads, is doing all those kind of a thing, it will reflect as a macroeconomic activity. But in terms of standards of living, that will not translate. So that's the biggest problem that we have today. We find ourselves that we've been caught up with government's heavy investment in infrastructure projects and such kind of a project, but people don't feel that growth.
When we speak judiciary, and remember, and I want to tweak this a little bit and put it to context. Currently, we are all fighting corruption. This is the same institution that we need them to sit and review these cases, pass judgments, but now as we sit, they cannot dispense of their activities. When you listen to the parliamentarians, the budget that was given to judiciary is at its bare minimum. Already. When you slash it by half, what are you doing? You're completely telling this institution, hey, judges just sit, you'll earn your salary. At the end of the day, we'll do a SWOT analysis in terms of performance, and that's just it. The reason as to why the judiciary needs this budget is purely to dispense of justice and to allow the wheels of justice to roll out its activities. There's so much that goes on, including our mobile courts now. They cannot, we cannot make use of the mobile courts. And the whole idea was actually to take justice closer to the people. Let's look at the expenses involved. When we talk about criminals in remand, it's not any cheaper to the prisons where they are now forced to hold these criminals for a longer period of time as we await hearing of these cases. And truth be told, right now as we sit, and all lawyers will tell you, it's almost impossible to get a closer hearing date.
Now what has happened is, over the years, we have been borrowing as a country. And you can look at the history of public debt in this country. What has changed is, how do we use our debt? And we have said many times, and this is not a secret, that any borrowing you do, you don't use it for recurrent expenditure. You do it for development expenditure. Why do you do it for development expenditure? The expectation is, if you invest today, in 10 years to come, you'll be at a level where the returns from that investment will be able to pay the debt.
And as a country, should we get to a point in time, actually, we look at our debt, extinguish the expensive debt because we cannot postpone the problem, and refinance our debt. And I like what you're saying, because the 4 trillion that we've borrowed so far in the past, where has that money been put into? Can we have and when we say let's have an audit, the people that are watchdogs, the people are watchdogs for us as Wananchi. It is the Honorable Makalis of this world. It is the members of parliament that are meant to put checks and balances.
And he's saying the paperwork looks good, but the implementation is where the problem is.
No, but
that's essentially they were lied to.
In that paperwork that looks good, today, the 4 trillion that we've already swallowed or borrowed as a country so far, what has it been spent into?
We are funding a budget that we are not living within our means. And I think it's written in the paper that we are not living within our means. And that's the biggest problem that we have. Reduce our spending and you'll reduce your borrowing. Because if you don't do that, we'll continue borrowing till the day that our economic laws will find us and punish us.
I want to believe if the judiciary austerity measures, you have to plan as per what is happening. If you have some money to utilize on certain issues, then you have to cut certain budgets for you to be able to roll out all the activities.
Okay.
So it's about planning your administrative work.
We are saying while everybody is facing that challenge, it should not be unique to judiciary to start revising the activities. The thing is, you have a whole year to plan. Maybe Q1 they're falling short of the correction. They might be able to catch up. But from what we have heard from Treasury, they are even trying to reduce the projected revenue collection for the year. Because
of lack of leadership, proper leadership and mismanagement of that sector, we're about to kill our good sector. Why should we be doing huge projects, i.e. real estate developments in the coffee plantations? We can as well do them in the hard areas in Ukambani. At the end of the day, it's brick and mortar. When you uproot coffee to do buildings, to do residential properties, apartments that we've seen in the coffee. So the need of just protecting that belt, we could do this thing. I mean, look at how the US and Vegas, they did out in the desert. Go put up those things out there in the arid areas, and you open it up.
You can't grow.